What if I told you that the most skillful player in football history was nearly taken out of the game, not by injury, not by retirement, but by pure, unrelenting violence on the field? In the 1966 World Cup, Pelé, the king of football, endured a level of brutality that shook the world and forced FIFA to rethink the very rules of the sport. But how did it happen? Why did opponents target him so ruthlessly? And how did Pelé rise from the ashes of this painful experience to change football forever? To find out, we need to go back to the 1960s, a time when skill was a liability and football was far from the beautiful game we know today. Pelé, the icon every defender wanted to stop. By 1966, Pelé wasn't just a player, he was the beating heart of football itself. Born Edson Arantes do Nascimento in 1940 in the small Brazilian town of Três Corações, Pelé's journey was nothing short of miraculous. Growing up in poverty, he learned to play football barefoot, often using a stuffed sock or a grapefruit as a ball. Despite these humble beginnings, his talent was undeniable, and by his teenage years, he was already turning heads in Brazilian football. At just 17 years old, Pelé announced himself on the global stage during the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. His dazzling skills, including a hat trick in the semifinals and 2 goals in the final, helped Brazil claim their first ever championship. The world had never seen a player like him, young, fearless, and capable of pure magic. In 1962, he solidified his greatness by leading Brazil to another World Cup victory, though injury cut his tournament short. By the mid-1960s, Pelé was a household name, revered as a symbol of Brazilian excellence and global football artistry. But Pelé wasn't just a footballer, he was an artist with the ball. His dribbling was poetry in motion, his vision was unparalleled, and his ability to score from any position made him unstoppable. He could curl free kicks with precision, dance past defenders with ease, and leap higher than players much taller than him to deliver perfect headers. Pelé wasn't just dominating matches, he was redefining the sport. However, brilliance often comes with a price. Pelé's dominance made him a marked man. Defenders, unable to match his skill, turned to brute force to stop him. By the time the 1966 World Cup arrived, Pelé was no longer just a player, he was a target. For his opponents, stopping Pelé wasn't just a strategy, it was a mission. The 1966 World Cup, skill meets brutality. The 1966 World Cup, hosted by England, promised to be a spectacle. It was the first time the tournament was held in the birthplace of modern football, and expectations were through the roof. Fans around the globe eagerly awaited another dazzling performance from Pelé, the undisputed king of the sport. Brazil, having won back-to-back World Cups in 1958 and 1962, was poised to make history by securing an unprecedented 3rd consecutive title. But from the very first match, it became clear that this World Cup would be unlike any other. The game had grown increasingly physical, with defenders adopting rougher tactics to neutralize skilled players. The referees, many of whom were inexperienced on the world stage, were hesitant to blow the whistle for fouls, allowing games to spiral into chaos. For many defenders, this tournament was a chance to prove themselves against the best, and Pelé, the crown jewel of Brazilian football, became the ultimate target. Brazil's opening match against Bulgaria set the tone for the brutality to come. Every time Pelé touched the ball, defenders swarmed him, hacking at his legs with reckless abandon. The tackles weren't just physical, they were calculated attempts to intimidate and injure. Despite the relentless assault, Pelé showcased his brilliance with a stunning free kick goal, reminding the world why he was the best. However, the cost of that performance was high. By the end of the match, Pelé's legs were battered and his body was in agony. The fouls had taken their toll, forcing him to sit out Brazil's next game against Hungary. For the first time in his career, the indomitable Pelé began to question his ability to overcome such relentless aggression. The 1966 World Cup, meant to be his crowning achievement, was turning into a nightmare. The fouls that shook the world. The defining moment of the 1966 World Cup wasn't a dazzling goal or a thrilling comeback. It was the unrelenting brutality Brazil endured in their final group stage match against Portugal. For Pelé, it was a nightmare that would haunt him for years. Pelé had missed Brazil's second game due to injuries sustained against Bulgaria, but as the reigning champions faced a must-win match against Portugal, he returned to the lineup, determined to carry his team to victory. The stakes were high, and Pelé, the heart and soul of Brazil, was their only hope. But Portugal had no intention of letting him shine. From the opening minutes, Pelé was relentlessly targeted by Portugal's defenders. Every time he touched the ball, a tackle came flying in, each more vicious than the last. The most brutal came from João Moraes, who lunged at Pelé with a tackle so reckless it was almost surreal. Moraes didn't just go for the ball, he went for Pelé's legs, sending him crashing to the ground, clutching his knee in agony. The stadium fell silent as Pelé lay motionless, the crowd holding its breath. Would the king rise again? Against all odds, Pelé returned to the field, limping as he tried to carry on, but the attacks kept coming. Every movement was a struggle, every tackle a calculated attempt to break him. And here's the most shocking part. The referees stood by and did nothing. No yellow card, no red card, just silence. Pelé was effectively playing on one leg, his genius muted by pain. Brazil, stripped of their talisman, fell 3-1 to Portugal, crashing out of the tournament in the group stage, a humiliating end for the reigning champions. As Pelé limped off the field, tears streaming down his face, he made a vow that sent shockwaves through the football world. He would never play in another World Cup. For Pelé, the beautiful game had turned ugly and his faith in football was shattered. Brazil's shocking exit and Pelé's anguish. For Brazil, their early exit from the 1966 World Cup wasn't just a defeat, it was a national tragedy. Fans were devastated, and questions swirled about how this could happen to a team with so much talent. But the answer was painfully clear. Without a healthy Pelé, Brazil wasn't the same. For Pelé, the pain wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The king of football had been reduced to a punching bag, and the referees had allowed it to happen. His faith in the sport he loved was shaken to its core. In interviews after the tournament, Pelé didn't hold back. He expressed his frustration with the lack of protection for skillful players and his disillusionment with the game's governing bodies. To him, the 1966 World Cup wasn't about the beauty of football. It was about survival. FIFA's response, a game forever changed. The brutality Pelé endured in 1966 sparked outrage around the world. Fans, journalists, and players alike called for changes to protect the sport's greatest assets. Football's governing body, FIFA, could no longer ignore the problem. In the years that followed, FIFA introduced new rules to curb violent play and protect players. The most significant change came in the form of yellow and red cards, which were introduced at the 1970 World Cup. For the first time, referees had a clear, standardized way to punish dangerous tackles and unsporting behavior. These changes weren't just about protecting players like Pelé, they were about preserving the integrity of the game. Football was meant to be a showcase of skill and creativity, not a battlefield where artistry was punished with violence. Pelé's suffering in 1966 was the catalyst for a safer, fairer game. His pain forced FIFA to act, ensuring that future generations of players could express themselves without fear of career-ending tackles. Pelé's redemption and legacy. After the heartbreak and brutality of the 1966 World Cup, Pelé vowed never to play in another tournament. The pain, both physical and emotional, was too much to bear. But football wasn't just a game for Pelé, it was his life. The roar of the crowd, the ball at his feet, and the dreams of his country were too powerful to resist. By 1970, Pelé had returned to the global stage, leading a new generation of Brazilian players in what would become one of the most iconic World Cup campaigns in history. The 1970 World Cup in Mexico was a turning point, not just for Pelé, but for football itself. Pelé entered the tournament as the experienced leader of a Brazilian squad brimming with talent, players like Jairzinho, Tostão, and Carlos Alberto. This team wasn't just aiming to win, they were determined to redefine football as an art form. In Mexico, Pelé was unstoppable. He scored 4 goals, including a towering header in the final against Italy, and provided 6 assists, showcasing his playmaking brilliance. His contributions weren't just statistical, they were moments of magic. Who could forget his audacious attempt to score from midfield against Czechoslovakia or his famous dummy against Uruguay's goalkeeper? In the final, Brazil dismantled Italy 4-1, with Pelé scoring the opening goal and assisting Carlos Alberto's legendary strike that sealed the victory. It was Brazil's 3rd World Cup title, making them the first team to win the Jules Rimet Trophy outright. The contrast between 1966 and 1970 couldn't have been more profound. In 1966, Pelé was a target. In 1970, he was a hero. The changes inspired by his struggles, stricter officiating and better player protection had transformed the game. Skill was now celebrated, and players like Pelé could shine without fear. Pelé's legacy transcends his goals and trophies. He is remembered not just as the king of football, but as a symbol of resilience and change. His suffering in 1966 helped shape the game into what it is today, a beautiful, skillful, and safer sport for generations to come. Pelé's journey from the brutality of 1966 to the glory of 1970 is a story of resilience, evolution, and the power of change. His pain wasn't in vain. It forced football to confront its darkest truths and emerge stronger. So what do you think? Was 1966 the turning point that saved football? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for another untold story from the world of football.